Hello, everyone. How are you? All right. Yeah, I saw a fist pump out there. Awesome. Well, welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to join today's at Google Authors Talk. Today, we are in for a very special treat. We have Ariane de Bonvoisin, who has joined us from New York, and she's going to talk about her latest book. It's called The First 30 Days, and like I mentioned, they're for sale in the back for the bargain price of $5. Thank you, Google. And what she's going to cover in the book is really addressing the question, is there a way to make change easier? I'm sure we're all pondering that and have pondered that, whether your change or things that are going on happen to be about career, relationships, health, finance, pretty much any big life issue. So Ariane is going to talk about her 9 principles of change and how that can help anyone out in any change that they're going through. Ariane's written many books, and in her previous career before being an author, she actually was in management consulting. So she comes from a good business background and has applied a lot of that to her writing. She's also ventured into other areas lately, like developing iPhone apps. So you may even know that she's coming out with an app called Mindful 365, and you may even be beta testing that. If anyone is doing that, Ariane is trying to apply some of these principles into a mobile app, which is awesome. So if you're interested in that, you can also let her know at the end. And what else? Ariane is a great avid traveler. She's been to 60 countries. And part of that was a 2-year hiatus that she took and recently returned from, and had a incredible journey, which actually, little spoiler alert here, we're actually going to be talking about some of her travel later today, where she appears in a documentary film about traveling the Himalayas on a motorcycle, and it's called The Highest Pass. So lots going on today with Ariane. We're very excited to have her. Please welcome Ariane de Bonvoisin.
Rachel, thank you. She deserves big acknowledgements. I know that she's brought a lot of amazing people here. And she's hosting me, and she goes way and beyond just taking care of authors and other people. So really thank you. It's a blessing. So we have probably, I think, about an hour together. What I was going to do is just tell you a little bit about my story and why I'm here and what I'm doing with my life these days, which is very different. It's been a big change to what I used to be doing. And then I'm going to take you through the 9 principles of change as quick as I can. I usually take like 3 hours or a whole day to do them, so I'm going to speed through them. And then I'm going to stick around and take as many questions as you guys have time for. And then, as I said, the film is going to be screening, I think at 3:30 in the same room. So if you guys can take an entire day off work, I'll be totally here for you. So with that said, you can hear, obviously I have an accent. It's usually the first question I get asked. I usually ask people to any sense of sort of where I'm from or what the accent is. Anyone wants to guess? It's a free book in the back for the guess. No? Yes? New Zealand. New Zealand, not. Anyway, I'll make it quick. I was born in the US, believe it or not, so I'm actually American by birth. I have a French mother and a Belgian father, and I grew up in 6 different countries, so I don't really know where my accent's from. And depending on who I'm with, the accent sort of tends to change. But I grew up in the US, I grew up in Paris, in Brussels, London, Hong Kong, and also in China. So I think without knowing it, my parents were sort of getting me ready for this lifetime career of change, although I just didn't know it at the time. But you get exposed to very different schools and religious environments and cultures and food, and you name it, you sort of get given this sort of big trip into change. And even despite all the change that I'd been given, what happened was that I tended to do what I would consider the safe route. So I went to college, I went to the London School of Economics, graduated first in my class, did what I thought was expected of me. So I had this sort of big should program on me. I should study hard, I should go to college, I should go to certain companies. So the next should was to go into management consulting. I studied economics, and it felt like it was just the right next thing to do. So I joined the Boston Consulting Group and did a couple of years with them. They sent me all around the world, which made that experience a little bit easier for me. But I always kind of had an inkling that something wasn't quite right. I kind of knew that it wasn't really what I was here to be doing. I sort of shut that voice down for a little while longer, and then I came out here and I went to business school. So I went to Stanford, And, that was sort of an amazing experience, but I kept on sort of saying, what should I do with my life? That was sort of the big lingering question in the background. And I tripped off to New York City after that, and I spent 10 years in the media world. And I worked at Bertelsmann, I worked at Sony, I worked at Time Warner. And as you can tell, I was jumping around a lot, and I kept on trying to sort of figure out what is actually right? What am I meant to be doing with my life? And I landed at Time Warner at the age of 28, 29, in charge of a $500 million venture capital fund. And I was managing director of this fund, and I was, supposedly had climbed this very high ladder, but I had the sense that it was the wrong ladder, and it was definitely leaning up against the wrong wall. And even though I had this semblance of a very perfect sort of external life, what started happening was that inner microphone that you all have started going off pretty loudly. And the inner microphone sounds like this. Ariane, you're in the wrong job. That was the first inner microphone. The second inner microphone was, Ariane, you're sleeping with the wrong guy. That was the second one. And I thought, how is it possible that I've set up this perfect life and none of it's right and all of it needs to now change? So I was about 30, 31, and it's a long story, but I eventually had the courage to leave that job. And I actually had no idea what was going to come next. I was sort of in that void and in between careers and couldn't quite see what was coming. And so what I did was I started getting really honest with myself. What was the number one thing that was missing for me? And it was a sense that I wasn't really making a difference. I wasn't really adding value. I wasn't really contributing. And it's interesting, if you look at like all the research now going on in the US, the number one reason people are unhappy at work, and people in general have this sense of slight depression. Gallup poll did a poll recently where more than 2/3 of employees are unhappy in their work. And the number one reason is because people don't feel that they're actually adding value. So I was feeling that big time. And so I did what I knew best, which is I went off and I went traveling. And I started asking myself very different questions. So instead of creating this externally perfect life, I sort of turned my entire focus inwards. And I started asking very internal questions. What's worth doing with this life? What does Ariane want to do? Not my parents, not what was expected of me, not sort of all this external conditioning, what I call the tribe, where the tribe has sort of told you what is expected of you. And it was while I was traveling, I sort of had this one question to life. Show me the way. Show me the way, show me what's next, show me what I'm meant to be doing. And I sort of walked around a few different countries with sort of antenna on my head. And I was just looking for signs or synchronicities and things that could give me a clue. And what I realized was that every single person I was meeting was in one of three categories, and all of you are in this as well. They were either going through some sort of a change, they were either thinking about making a change, but had some sort of excuse or something going on in the way, or they were helping someone with a change. So it was a spouse or a friend or a partner or a child or a colleague. And then I found out later I was giving a speech somewhere else, and someone said, no, there's a fourth category. And I was like, bring it on. And the fourth category, which some of us are all guilty of, is we're waiting for someone else to change. Not us. We're waiting for someone else to change. It has nothing to do with us. But it was interesting that this change thing was all around me. And I met people who had gotten divorced, and I met people who had just lost a parent, and I met people who had just found out their child was autistic, and I met people who were getting through depression, and I met people who just lost their job. But it was like this change thing was all around me, and I thought, isn't it interesting that change is the number one guarantee in life? JFK said it's the law of life, and yet no one knows how to go through it. And I thought there must be ways to make change easier. Like, we're all going through it. I personally believe it's the most important life skill to get good at. As parents, we protect our kids from change. We definitely do not throw them into change. The less change, the more stable, the more calm, the more you think you're doing your kids a favor, which is not the case. And as adults, we walk into the world and we're thrown with so much change and we actually don't have the skills to sort of navigate it. So what I sort of started thinking was, well, what happens if I interviewed people and just sort of started listening to why is it that you're good at change and someone else has a really hard time? Why is it that some of you are thinking about a change and others of you have actually gone on and done that? And it was fascinating to me that some of us were naturally good at change and others weren't. Were men better at change than women? So it sort of descended on me as like, just go research this. It wasn't sort of, this is your next job or this is what you're meant to be doing with your life. And so I started interviewing people, and I found, in effect, that there were ways to make change easier. So what I wanted to do is, I'm going to take you through these 9 principles. What I did eventually was I did write a book about it, which, right over here, the first 30 days. I called it the first 30 days because I wanted people to get a sense that it takes more than just sort of the action plan or the 3 things to do. Or, here is how you start a business. Here's how you leave a job that you don't like. There's actually sort of emotions that you need to actually go through when you go through change. I started a website as well that goes with it, first30days.com. But what I wanted to say before I take you through the 9 principles, 3 things. Most of us, when we think about change, we think about external changes. When we're going to meet the soulmate, when we're going to get married, when we're going to have kids, when we're going to have the big promotion. The most effective and the most important changes you will ever make in your life are internal changes. Changes about how you see yourself, changes about your identity, changes about who you decide to forgive, changes about who you decide to get honest with. Internal changes, the identity of who you are and who you see yourself to be, those are the changes that change everything. It's not when the external changes happen. You're going to see that through the 9 principles. It came out very, very strongly. The second thing is, change is all about getting comfortable with the unknown. It's not about clinging to, here's how it's going to be, or here's how someone else's experience was and that's what it's going to be. It's all about getting comfortable with that void of actually not knowing how it's going to be. And the third thing is, the very best of who you are comes out during times of change. It does not come out when everything is really certain and perfect. Your core essence is actually to go through changes. When you're comfortable, that's when life feels quite dull. When you're actually going through things, that's when there's life force, there's juice that's actually coming through you. So the invitation is to sort of, give you a sense of, well, where are you on the change spectrum? So to do that, I'm just going to throw out a few questions. Whether you want to answer them in your head or write them down is sort of up to you. And I do this with all the groups I talk to. The first question is, naturally, do you think you are good at change? Yes or no? What comes up? Are you a change optimist? Do you move towards change? You're like, I'm so not a change person. If things never changed, I'd be much happier the way it is. Second question, do you feel you are better at making changes or at facing changes that come your way? Are you one that naturally goes after a new change? Or are you actually really good when life just goes, handle it, deal with it? Because it's 2 very different types of people. Most people can kind of go, I'm really good at change. And they're really good in the crisis, but if you actually ask them what are changes they'd love to make, they don't go close to them. That's the second question. Third question, just to give you a sense of what I call your change history. The core of who you are all the changes you've ever made, been through, faced, witnessed other people going through. That's it. You are a walking combination of all the changes you've had the courage to make and get through. What is the very best change you've ever made? It could have been to get married. It could have been to finally get divorced. It could have been to have children. It could have been to come and work here. It could have been to finally listen to that inner microphone and go, you know what, I hate this job. It's killing my soul. I can't do this anymore. It could have been to quit smoking. It could have been to lose weight. It could have been to take care of an elderly parent. What's the very best change when you see the consequences of what happened? It might have been super hard at the time, but what was the best change? Next one, you can guess which one's coming now. What is the hardest change you've ever been through? Hardest change you've ever been through. Seeing a parent be depressed, losing a loved one, something going on with a child, being fired. There's so many, being wrongly accused about something, the hardest change you've ever been through. And then the final question is, what is a change that you've been thinking about making, you'd love to make? There's something where you're like, I'd love to take time off. I'd love to start my own business. I'd love to ask someone to marry me. I'd love to have a child. And then ask yourself, what's in the way of you making that change? Because having interviewed maybe a couple of thousand people by now about change, there's only a certain amount of excuses that I've heard of. So I'm going to run a few of them through, and if you guys have new excuses, you can throw them at me. Excuses why people don't make changes. 1, I don't have time. Another one I hear all the time is, it's going to cost money. Another one is, I'm too old. On the flip side, I'm too young. Another one which I hear a lot is, it's not my nature. I'm not the sort of guy that does this, or I'm not the sort of girl that does this. That's the identity change, right? The hardest change you'll ever make is an identity change of how you see yourself. You go from being a business person, myself, to being more of a creative person. That's an incredibly difficult change to eventually make. But it's not my nature. Another one is, someone's gonna disapprove. Very big excuse. Someone's gonna be upset with me. Someone's gonna be disappointed. Someone's gonna think I'm crazy. It could be a parent, it could be a partner, but someone is really getting in the way and sort of go, no, you can't do that, because it's gonna threaten them as well. But someone's gonna disapprove. Another one that I hear a lot is that, it's just not worth it. I'm comfortable, I'm in a safe place, I'm in a safe environment, I'm in a safe job, I'm in a safe marriage. There's the safety thing that, again, people are not really willing. So whatever the excuse is for you, just keep it in mind. A lot of this is just bringing out of your blind spot things that are actually running the change show that you've probably never really considered. So having said that, I'm going to just jump in and dive right into these 9 principles. So these came from, as I said, about 2,000 interviews, people all around the world, every country I would go to. I'd sit next to someone on a plane, or I'd sit and actually have a proper formal interview and tape them. And I would ask them a selection of questions and just try and elicit what made change easier. So what you're going to hear in these 9 principles is some of them are incredibly obvious. Some of them are very basic and very simple. And it is always the simple things that we don't do. We're much better at doing complicated things. We're really not very good at doing the obvious simple things. So as you hear some of these, just ask yourself, is this one of the principles I'm actually pretty good at, or should I take a note and actually work a little bit? Some of them you're going to be already great at. So the first principle of change, people who successfully navigate change have positive beliefs. That's it. If I had to build a house in front of you here, and I had to lay the bricks of the foundation of how and why people go through change, your beliefs are the #1 thing that are going to either make this easier or more difficult. What do I mean about beliefs? Beliefs about 3 different things. Beliefs about yourself, beliefs about life, and beliefs about the specific change that you're either making or going to be facing. Let's talk about beliefs about yourself. Most of us have terrible beliefs about ourselves. Most of us are in poor me, or you're living small, or you're playing the victim, or you're blaming someone else. The average person disapproves of themselves between 50 and 65 times a day. A day. That's how bad the mental dialogue is, So just being aware of what are the worst things that I keep telling myself, because you're not even aware of them. I usually invite people to do what I call a 24-hour disapproval challenge, which is for the next 24 hours, just catch yourself every time you disapprove. What you said, what you did, what you ate, what you didn't eat, what you should have said in a meeting, what you sent as an email, what you wore, whatever it is, how long you slept, the wrong route that you choose in traffic. Just be aware of the level of mental chatter that is going on. But the beliefs you have about yourself, you're either giving yourself a green light to walk, or you're actually consistently holding yourself back. But the disapproval is probably one of the biggest fundamental stumbling blocks when people are going through change. Beliefs about life. This is one of the juiciest ones that I really like. When I was interviewing people, I could always notice that when people were talking about change, somehow they believed that life was on their side. So Einstein said it much better than I did. The most important decision you'll ever make in your life is to decide whether you live in a friendly universe or an unfriendly universe. That's it. The most important decision you'll ever make in your life. Is life on your side? Is life against you? Are you lucky? Are you unlucky? Is life pissing you off? One more obstacle, one more challenge? Or is life actually giving you challenges because it's moving you in the right direction? That is it. Whichever way you go, you will have 2 very different lives. You know people who have a very optimistic view of, even though life tragedies, really tough stuff has happened, positive things have sort of come on from those people. I don't know which one you guys are, but if there's one thing to look at is life your partner, is life against you? Because life will be very different. And then the third one is looking at, well, what's the specific change that's actually happening for you? You know, you have beliefs about changing jobs. You have beliefs about getting divorced. You have beliefs about losing weight. Actually looking at where are those beliefs from? Who's told you those things? You need to consciously choose what it is that those beliefs are about. The one thing that you'll see in this first principle is that when people are good at change, they are very committed to one thing, which is they're committed to finding inside what the lesson is when they're going through change. External change happens. What do? We try and run and fix the outside. It's a very external thing. It's never about what to do on the outside. It's about checking in what's going on the inside. What's my lesson here? Why is this happening? How am I self-responsible? Which is not something we like looking at. It's always, you know, the energy goes out. People who are good at change are very inwardly focused. It's a very sort of what I call a deep looking experiment. If you're going through a change right now or you're looking at making a change, make it from the inside out. It's not about figuring out how to move the pieces on the outside. Okay, principle number 2, another one of my favorites. Principle number 2 is what I call the change guarantee. The change guarantee states this: from this situation, from this change, something good will come. That's it. I have it written all over my office. I've given it to all our employees. I have it in my car. I have it in my bathroom, so that when that change happens, when the email comes in and something starts changing, when the phone call comes in, when the person comes in and says something to you, and you go into your normal change emotions, which we're going to talk about, if the first thing you can go to is, from this change, something good will come, you start moving in that direction of what the blessing is. If you go into, you know, bad things are happening, this is really challenging, you're actually going to get more of that. I teach this principle to kids, and somehow adults really complicate this. Kids get this immediately. Something's changing, and they can immediately go to, well, something not necessarily better, but something good is going to come from this. Why is change so hard? Because we cling to our plans. We are obsessed with our plans. We're addicted. If you have one addiction, it's to the way you think your life needs to be going. I'm going to be married by this age. I'm going to have this job and this money and this house. And life goes, and then we all go into suffering. It's not about life moving the pieces. It's about clinging and being so attached to life going in the my way direction. If you can just sort of relax into life and just go, you know what? Life maybe has my best interests at heart. Life somehow has always guided me in the right way. But unloosening from the gripping and the clinging, that's the thing that makes you suffer through change. It's not actually the change itself. The change guarantee, you know, when we go through change, the first question we go to is why? Why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? You know, why do I now need to have the courage to do this? The question is never about why. The question is always about how to be. How to be. What in me needs to shift? What in me needs to change? Not external changes. Change guarantee, if you can write it down, as I said, you know, you get what you focus on. So the more focused you are on actually finding the positive, the more your mind is actually going to go looking for that. You move into that direction. Something good will come. Change guarantee. Third principle. Third principle is what I've affectionately called the change muscle. People who are good at change they have the sense that no matter what, they're strong, they're resilient, they're capable, they can get through anything. Despite what they've been told, despite what their parents told them, despite what society tells them, despite what people tell them they should be doing at their particular age or in a particular way. There's this sense of, you know what, I know that I'm going to get through it, no matter what it is that life throws my way. And I can tell you, every single one of you in this room has gone through dozens and dozens of life changes. Here's the difference. Most of you have never acknowledged yourself for any of them. Because when you were in them, you were so busy trying to get through them that you never sort of look back and kind of go, hey, I'm the girl that changed jobs, you know, good on me. Or hey, I'm the girl that lost a ton of weight. Or I'm the guy that finally had the courage to get divorced and go be with a woman that I love, or whatever it is. But you have never acknowledged yourself for all the changes you've already made. But your body has the sense of knowing how to change. Your body has a sense of knowing already how to change. So even though the change you're thinking about making, or the change that might be in front of you now, looks like a new change, the body goes, oh, new change, I have no idea what to do with this new change. And that's not true. You have a toolbox already in place of how to go through change. If you could, when I have more time with people, I take people through what I call their change resume, which is much more effective and important than your professional resume that we spend our whole life putting together. Your change resume are all the changes you've made, all the changes life has thrown at you, all the changes you've had to help other people with, and there are ways that you get through change. They're different for every one of you. Most of you have a rock-solid belief that helps you, no matter what, go through change. And knowing what that is super valuable. So it could be, this too shall pass. It's just, if I give this enough time, time heals all things. Or I know someone can help me with this change. Or you pray more. A lot of people go to their spiritual path when they're going through a life change. But there is a core belief that you go through no matter what when you're going through a life change. Bring that out of your blind spot. Think about the difficult changes you've made in the past and what is actually the things that you took with you. Because getting in touch with what activates your change muscle. But we play so small. We keep thinking we're not as strong, not as powerful, not as effective. We shrink at the first sight of fear. But just getting a sense, like the people I interviewed people who'd gone through real traumatic things in Africa and you name it. And there was this sense of not education, not money, not what their parents had told them. There was this core fundamental inner strength that just radiated out of them, and we're all born with it. And it's not a matter of like going to find it. It's a matter of uncovering what's blocking it, right? We've all been given it. It's just the light that needs to sort of come through. What is in the way? What's in the way? Maybe it's a belief. Maybe it's a wound or a past change that you still sort of are trying to get through. But just realizing, that the level of your change muscle, your body is born to change. Your body is on your side when you go through change. Your body is changing every second of every day. It has to change, right, to survive. Principle number 4. Have a swig of water. Principle number 4 is a juicy one, very juicy. It's what I call your change demons. Your change demons are all the emotions that are guaranteed to show up when you're going through a life change. So they're going to walk themselves in the door, and if I tell you what they are, you can be a little bit more prepared when they sort of walk in for the party. What I would invite you to do is invite them in, but don't feed them and do not entertain them. And do not welcome their friends in even more, because when we feel one emotion, as human beings, we tend to stack 3 more. Like we're really good stackers. Oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious. Oh, and I'm going to feel, 3 more negative things on top of that. Somehow we do that as human beings. Here's what I found before I tell you what these change demons were, which is the most core important message of this principle. People who are good at change are very emotional. They are not practical. They don't go in their to-do list, and here are the 3 ways to get divorced. They feel their emotions much more deeply than people who don't get through the change. People who eat the emotions away, or work the emotions away, or TV or Facebook the emotions away. People who are good at change are much more emotional. So if you are emotional, you actually can give yourself a gold star right now. For once, it's actually not a bad thing. People who are good at change have a humanity about them. They allow themselves to be human. They allow themselves to sort of go, you know what? I didn't get the manual on how to deal with, my child being sick. I didn't get the manual on how to deal with my mother being depressed. But there's a permission to be human. If you are helping anyone going through a change, this is probably the most important principle. Allow people to feel their emotions. Don't change them. Don't offer them drinks. Just be a refuge for people who are going through change. That was very interesting, because my sense when I was looking for the principles was, okay, there's things that people are doing that are making them better at change. And it wasn't. There are things that people are feeling that make them much better at change. They're feeling the fear, because eventually every emotion you feel is actually going to leave the body. If you don't want to feel it, guess what? It's kind of there all the time. If you wake up in the morning, you feel one of these emotions, and you eat it away, I guarantee you at 4 o'clock, you're still eating it away. I always ask this question because it's interesting to find out. There is an emotion in every one of us that we do everything to avoid having to feel. Everything. And we think we're not feeling it. And the reality is, that is the emotion that is ruling your life. It's the emotion that's constantly going on. Why you do what you do, who you date, what you eat, where you work is constantly being decided by this one emotion you don't want to feel. Humiliation, embarrassment, not getting it right, not being perfect, whatever it is for you, but there's one emotion that is holding you back in every area of your life. It's actually not allowing you to move forward in any way. So get in touch with what's the one thing that I think I've kind of got under control, and the way to do it is to actually just allow it up, speak to it. What's the message? Why is it actually here? So you've been super patient. So here are the 6 change demons. In no particular order, these can sort of show up in different ways for different people. And you know, there's a lot of pages in the book about particular change demons. The first one is obviously fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the change being permanent. Big one. Fear of taking it personally. I'm responsible for this change. This happened to me. This change says something negative about me. But fear, there's so many different fears that can sort of get involved. For every change demon, what I did with people is I said, okay, so you're in the fear. What actually moved you through the fear? So there was what I call this antidote that had to be bigger than the fear, which eventually they would go to. The antidote to fear is faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your change muscle, faith in someone else being able to help you, faith in time, faith in something greater. But there's this level of what can be bigger than the fear? I'm still going to allow the fear to show up, but what's going to be bigger than the fear? The next change demon was doubt. You know, closely related friend or twin. But the next change demon was doubt. Doubt of what's going to happen now. Doubt around money. Doubt around ever finding another lover. Doubt around, you know, when to have children. Doubt, whatever it was. Doubt around getting better and healing. I interviewed a lot of people who had health diagnoses. The antidote to doubt is always surrender. Because trying to make plans and certainty with your mind is exhausting. It's exhausting, and it's never going to work out the way your perfectly beautiful mind thinks it's going to work out. It's tiring. The mind chatter of planning and strategizing and how's it going to be and how's it going to work. If you could just let go and kind of go, again, life's going to work this out. I'm going to take action, but I'm going to take action with a still mind, not a really, really busy, hectic mind. That's when people get through change. It's not that you're stuck in paralysis and just going surrender, you know, life can kind of do it all for me. You're still taking action, but from a still surrendered place. You're taking it from a humble place. I actually don't know how it's going to turn out. You know, actually being able to own it and sort of go, actually, I don't know. It's a very powerful statement, much more so than, you know, most of us educated have ever been told that we should be able to say that. The antidote, oh, I've just done that. So doubt and surrender. The next one is blame. When change happens, there is always one person that we blame. And it could be your boss, and it could be your colleague, and it could be your child, and it could be your spouse, and it could be yourself. But there's always someone that takes the blame because it's really hard to get into self-responsibility when you're in the middle of change. How could this possibly be my thing? What do you mean? Like, I'm responsible for this thing that happened to me? I can guarantee you, if you want to get through a life change, the quicker you go into self-responsibility. It doesn't mean other people don't have their share of self-responsibility. But if there's one overarching theme, this deep looking, this self-responsibility, if you want to get through change quicker, that's what you need to go to. So the antidote to blame is always self-responsibility. There's something in there for you. And it's going to be a beautiful lesson when you give it and once the ego kind of takes a little bit of a break. And then next change demon is impatience. When we go through change, time wreaks havoc with us. The change seems to last forever. Time, you know, seems to not be moving. You want to speed it up. You make bad decisions to speed up the change. You send emails way too quickly to speed up the change because the uncomfortableness of staying in the middle of the change is not something we want to be in. Sometimes just waiting 5 minutes will actually have some different things show up in the change puzzle, whatever it is. But we're very impulsive, so we're very impatient. We're not willing to see what's in the gap. We're not willing to see what new people are going to walk into our life, what new opportunities, what new ideas are going to show up. But allowing yourself to be in that sort of zone. The antidote to impatience, believe it or not, is not patience. The antidote to impatience is endurance. It's actually just having the courage to keep going. The sort of determination will always get you through. Having the courage to keep going. It's not this sort of like, oh, okay, I'm going to be super patient with life here. No, do what you need to do, what's on your plate. Next two change demons. One of them is guilt. And this applies a lot more to women than men. Somehow men tend to not have the guilt gene, but guilt is women's middle name for some reason. You feel guilty that you were fired. You feel guilty that you messed up the presentation. You feel guilty that you're sick. You feel guilty that you're overweight. You feel guilty that you can't stop smoking. You feel guilty that your child isn't doing well at school. Whatever it is. But somehow there's this sense of like, it's my fault, which is very different than self-responsibility. Self-responsibility is this is my piece and this is your piece. It's not, it's now all on me. And by the way, you're going to take the last 10, 20, 30 years of your life and still kind of hold it with you. The antidote to guilt is always forgiveness. It goes back to this, people who are good at change are human. You need to let it go. It's this sense of the more I'm carrying from the past, the less change is now available for me coming forward in the future. But this sense of what do I need to let go of? We all have our list. What do we need to let go of? Who do I need to forgive? It's such a big question. What in me do I need to forgive? Huge question. We don't really want to go there. We're sort of like busy and doing, and we don't kind of want to see that that's one of the things that's really kind of holding us back. And the last one is very closely related, which is shame. When people go through change, this level of shame comes through them. And it's very basic, and it's very core emotion. And people don't talk about it very much. But we feel ashamed that we don't have as much money as we'd like, or that we aren't in the best of health, or that we aren't the greatest parent. But there's this level of shame that no one really wants to look at. Or we're ashamed that we had breast cancer, or prostate cancer, or that, we're not as effective as we thought we should. The antidote to shame is always honor. It's sort of stepping into that place and go, I am the person that got fired. I'm the person that is sick. But just owning it in a place of being powerful about it actually moves you through the change. The ignoring of it, the hoping no one ever sees it and no one ever addresses it, actually just keeps the change constantly running the show in the background. So that's change demons. I could say a lot more, but I'm going to have to move on. Principle number 5 is what I call the principle of acceptance. So people who are good at change have no resistance to the actual change that's going on. If you're in the midst of a change, the thing that's making the change painful is the amount of saying no to the change. Any change, small change, big change. The level of pushing the change away is what makes the change so difficult. So if you're in a work change and something's happening, the quicker you can get to, I accept this change, which is very different than I like this change, right? I'm not saying you need to like the change, but being able to step in and kind of go, I accept it, allows you to be able to move forward. There's another favorite quote of mine is by a woman called Byron Katie. And she said, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And we argue with reality every single day in so many ways. We argue with reality with people. We constantly want people to be different. Have you noticed that? Constantly. We're waiting for someone else to change. You're waiting for your mother to change. You're waiting for your parents to change. You're waiting for your colleagues or your boss to change. There's this constant arguing with reality of who you know people to be. No more. There's an arguing of reality of what's going on in the external environment. Do you know the energy it takes to argue with reality all the time? It's like being in a flowing river where, life is taking you exactly on the journey you're supposed to be on. And when life changes, or when, reality drops in, you do one of two things. You're in the flowing river, you hang on to the first rock or boulder, right? I'm not going to go forward. I don't like what this relationship's now going to look at. I don't like what this work is now going to possibly be. So you're kind of holding, you're resisting where life is actually already going to take you. Or you might be in another category. you start rowing back upstream. I want the body back. I want the relationship back. I want the money back that I lost in the stock market. So there's this sense of like going backwards. But when you're not in a place of sort of, I'm accepting the way it is, you're either stuck in the paralysis or you're living in the past. It's one of those two things. But it's never, it's not the actual change that's hard. Again, it's the energy that you had invested in, my life is going to look and be a certain way. So, I always ask the question, what is the one change or the one thing in your life that you still have not accepted? Because that also has tremendous power over you. Is it something someone said? Is it something someone did? What's that one thing that you really need to accept? Something about yourself. Something you still feel, I should be different. We have such a should program on us. We have a should program. We have a comparison program. We have a competition program on us. We're covered in programs. And one of those programs is basically holding you very hostage of you not being able to move forward when a change happens. Just so you know, the 3 most dominant programs you have as human beings, this comes from years of research, are 3 things. The first one is love and approval. The second one is control. And the third one is safety. Everything you do is to meet one of these 3 programs. Why you work here, who you're married to, or why you're single, why you eat or take care of your health the way you do, is to meet one of these 3 programs. You can see it in your colleagues and your friends. What is their dominant program? Are they love and approval seekers? Are they control people? I won't call them freaks. Are there safety people? Safe, 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 right? Everything needs to be safe. If you can just see what is the dominant program, even in the people you work with and the people you live with, you can meet them much more with what is their dominant program. They're wired this way. And the thing you need to remember is, once you know what your own program is, most people, for example, if they're in love and approval, they will do anything to get love and approval. And the paradox with life is, the more you move towards it, the more it moves away. So the more I want love and approval, the more it walks out the door. The more I don't really need love and approval, the more life kind of gives you it in bucket loads. The more you try and control life, you try and control people, your environment, the project, the work, the more control moves away from you. So being aware of what is your dominant program, because when life changes, it hits one of these 3 programs. Either love and approval's been chopped by someone or something, your control's gone out the door, and you don't feel safe. But one of them is most obvious. And being able to rest in and remember, the more I try and get safe, the more I'm going to feel unsafe. That's all just on that particular point, just remember. And start noticing in other people, oh, that behavior is really about, control, or it's really about safety. Leading me right into the next one. Principle number 6 are the things you can control when you're going through a life change. So when things change, everything feels very out of control. And as I said earlier, we do one thing. We try and sort of change things on the outside. The only thing you can control is your inner world. What do I mean by that specifically? Your language and words, the questions you ask yourself, the stories you tell yourself and other people. That's what I got from the people that I interviewed. So I'll give you an example. I interviewed people who'd lost their jobs. The language that they used, the words that they used, of people who got through the change and people who didn't. People who are good at change do not use words like disaster, nightmare, worst day ever, crazy, horrific week. They don't have that language. They have a very different vocabulary. So one of the things I'd invite you to look at, whether you're going through a change or you're not at this point, are what are your go-to words? Like, where are you sloppy with your words? Where are you sort of just quite casual about throwing out very negatively charged emotional words in work, in your personal environment, towards yourself? Because again, having the awareness of, and if you don't, I can guarantee your friends and colleagues can tell you, because you use these words all the time, you're not even aware of them. But where's just be very, have a finesse about what the words are. People who are good at change use words like opportunity, lesson, this is a challenge. You know, I'm really being asked to step up and look at something differently, but they don't have this negative tirade of words. Same thing with questions. You know, if you ask your mind a question, it's going to answer it. So if you go, why did this happen to me? Why am I so unlucky? Why is this guy such a jerk? Why is this woman such a whatever? The mind's going to answer that, and you're going to kind of feel, okay, well, that must be the truth because my mind answered it. People who are going to change have a very different level of questions. How can this be a good thing? How can I find some humor in this? This is so crazy. Who can help me? Great question to ask yourself when you're going through a change, which is not your typical normal question. You do have control over the questions that you keep asking yourself. And the final thing you can control, which is so powerful, are the stories you tell yourself. We are a walking library of stories. You have a story about yourself, your weight or why you can't lose it, how you are at work, about men, about women, about your parents, about why they're together, about why they got divorced, about religion, you have a story about everything. You actually are a walking library of stories. Your stories are not the facts. Your stories are a story about what happened. But there's again an addiction to sort of holding on to, here is the library of my life and no one's going to touch it. If you want a new story of any kind, if you want a new change, if you're going through a change and you want to look at it differently, you need to take one of these stories and actually create some space in your library for a new story. Not hold the story. If you don't know what your stories are, again, I guarantee you, just ask your friends or people you work with. You have a story about why you're single. You have a story about why you can't lose weight. And I promise you, your friends are bored with your story. And I know this from very personal experience. I used to have stories about being single, men in New York, my parents. Like, I was a walking library of stories. Until some pretty good friends kind of go, you know what? I'm really bored with the story about men in New York. And so you know what? I had a choice. I could fight the friend, because she was happily married, of course, right? I could fight the friend, or I could actually take it on and kind of go, you know what? You're right. I have a really big story about that particular issue. And it's funny, and I bring it up, but I promise you, you have a story that you are also holding on to for a dear life because you think it's the truth. It's not the truth. It's your story about it. So when you're going through change, you know, there's a sense of, again, controlling the outside. Turn it in. You control yourself. Watch how quickly your external environment changes. It's fascinating. It's not anything we've been told. We're told, you know, you move around things on the outside and then you get to feel better. No, 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 no. You get to feel better and the outside tends to sort of shift around. Put it to the test. I'm inviting you to actually look at the effect of that. Principle number 7. Principle number 7 is what I call your spiritual side. Every person I interviewed going through change that had found their courage and had found their strength and had found their inspiration referred to something to do with their spirituality or religion. They definitely didn't all agree on what they called it. Some called it grace, some called it presence, some called it God, some called it Buddha, some called it life, the universe, but they all agreed in one thing. Something bigger is going on here. I don't know why I'm in this change. It's crazy, it's difficult, it's amazing, I'm overwhelmed, whatever it is. You know, we all have sort of the change is a particular way story going on. But they had a sense of, I don't know what it is, but I feel like something bigger is happening here. And so trusting in the something bigger, whatever that is for you. But change is always an invitation to sort of get connected with that part, which very often when life is all rosy and happy, we tend to forget about that part. We tend to step into it as an invitation where, oh, I actually need to connect a little bit more with that. Again, you name it what you want. One of the number one ways I would suggest people to do it is just to find stillness, find silence of any kind at any time. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And I can tell you, if you do not have 20 minutes in your day to be still, there's something wrong with your day. You've got to find it. 10, 15 minutes of just stillness, no distractions, no busyness. Because if you can't, I would invite you to sort of say, well, what is it that you don't want to hear? What is it that you don't want to listen? Why is silence so scary? Like I make it what I call a non-negotiable. And I would invite you all to look at your non-negotiables and pick a couple. What are the things that you don't negotiate for anything? Not your kids, not your boss, not your parents, not anyone. What are your non-negotiables? My non-negotiables are my spiritual path and my health. No one touches those. And guess what? When you create a bit of a sacred space around whatever those non-negotiables are, life tends to keep you away from them. It's fine, because you've actually taken a stand for them. But find it, when everything in your life is changing, you have to find something that doesn't change. You have to. And a lot of the times when you're going through one change, life does a really funny thing. It brings 2 or 3 more changes with it, right? It's natural. Your job changes and now your relationships also change. Your money's changing and now, your home, something is changing as well. So life tends to bring with it more than one change at a time. It's my number one thing I would say. When you're in a change, you need to find a place that is what I call the silent witness, the silent observer that can kind of see but not be part of the change. And the biggest way to get in touch with that is to meditate. And if meditation's a scary word, it's just to sit in silence and just to sort of watch your thoughts. You don't even need to get involved. You don't need to entertain them. But there's a real invitation to do, if it's not meditation, go into nature. If it's not nature, start journaling. But there's plenty of ways to sort of get in touch with that more spiritual core. Okay, principle number 8. So much more I could have said on spirituality, but principle number 8 is what I call your change support team. People who are good at change are not alone. I'd say it's our biggest flaw as human beings. We keep thinking we're alone. I'm the only one going through this change. No one has ever felt this bad. No one has ever eaten this much ice cream. No one has ever cried so much on the couch. No one has ever been so heartbroken for so long. Like, we do this all the time. No one has ever messed up as much as I have. No one has ever, it's like the list continues. But we have this sense that we're alone. I'm the only one. And what does that do? That separates us, once again, from life. It separates us from people. It separates us from people who could be helping. So just ask yourself, are you a bit of a I'm alone person? Because if you are, you're going to make your life really difficult, because life is a combination of changes. Here's what's interesting. When you do go through change, your change support team are not necessarily the people you would naturally go to. When you go through change, I don't necessarily recommend calling your mother. Not a good idea. She loves you, she's on your love team, but she's not necessarily on your change team. She's going to be worried and she's going to ask you a million questions. And 5 days later, when you're kind of better, she's still worrying about your change. So when you're going through a change, be very mindful of who you're going to call, who actually can help you, who's on your change team. They're not your closest friends, partners, husbands, wives. They're going to be quite shaken by your change. The most beautiful thing is when you go through change, new people tend to show up in your life who have no idea who you are. They don't have this fixed identity of, Mike is this or Anne is that. There's sort of a freedom about who and what you are. They don't know how many times you've tried to lose weight, or how many times you've tried to stop smoking, or how many times you've messed up doing a particular thing. There's a neutrality about them. But be very careful. I always say, look at the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. 5 people you spend the most amount of time with have a massive influence on your life. Massive. In every regard. Who are your 5 people? Because we're very casual about who influences us when we're going through change. And you don't get good advice. You get their beliefs and their opinions and their fears and their conditioning. That's not advice. That's their stuff that they need to go work through. There's 2 types of people that I would say you find when you go through change. People that get in the hole with you, right? You're in the hole, they go in the hole with you. He's such a jerk. Absolutely, she should never have done that. I can't believe he did that to you, right? There's people that agree with you. And they kind of casually somewhat make you feel better for about half a second. And they're very often the people that drag you for a drink. Let's drink it away, or let's eat it away. Because they actually don't quite know how to deal with it, right? But they're not comfortable. And some of you might be these kind of people, which is sort of like, oh my God, my friend, my partner is going through a change. I'm going to try and, distract them in some ways. But some people walk right in the hole with you, and they're not very helpful. So don't surround yourself with those people who all they do is agree with you. You want people who are what I call ladder people. They see you in a hole, they hand you a ladder, and somehow they get you up the ladder. And you resist those people because it's much more comfortable being in the hole. You get attention, you get compassion, you get, validation. But get people who are actually going to walk you up the ladder. Those are the most important things. So that's change support team. Just be mindful of who's on your team. If you're thinking about making a change, who has made that change before you? That'd be a great person to go to. Most people, if they've been through a cancer diagnosis, they want to help. If someone has started a business, they want to help. If someone has lost weight, they want to help. Who needs to be on your change team? It's always a very powerful question to ask. The final principle of change is what I call the action principle. And there's a reason why this principle is at the end of the book as opposed to right at the beginning. Because if you haven't figured it out by now, all change is emotional. Change is not about taking actions. The actions to get divorced are actually very easy. The actions to quit smoking are really easy. The actions to lose weight are very easy. The actions to, start a business are pretty easy. It's the emotions that get in the way. It's all the things we've been talking about up till now. With that said, I would say no change happens without some action. Once the emotions are in a place where you're mindful about them, you actually need to get on the court. You can't just be on the stands talking about the change all the time. You need to get on the court. So whatever change is happening, ask yourself, have I actually picked up a racket, or do I just keep on talking about it? The most interesting part that I found in the action principle with people that I interviewed was this. The most important action people took when they go through change was to take care of their health. I mean, that was incredibly interesting to me. Because to me, I thought, okay, they're going to be doing a particular thing. No. When you're going through change, health is the number one thing that walks out the door. You sleep less or you sleep more. You start drinking a lot more coffee, alcohol. You're no time for exercise because now this change has happened and it's like I have no time. And usually you're eating a lot worse. Comfort, just to fill up the uncertainty because there's so much. So the number one thing that walks out the door is your health. So I'd interview people and I'd be like, okay, what really helped you? And they said one thing. He goes, I took care of myself. That's it. So again, it sounds very simple, but the more you take care of yourself, the higher your self-esteem is. The more you start, even just exercise. I say to a lot of people who come to see me, I've done a lot of one-on-one coaching. They go, I'm so depressed, or I'm stuck, or I'm paralyzed. They're not moving, or they're dehydrated. Of course they're depressed. Nothing's moving through the body. They haven't had a proper meal. They haven't had some sleep. So it's not necessarily the emotions are whacking you. You're not actually doing things to take care of it. So I came up with just a very simple acronym. It's what I call the seed of change, SEED. This is as basic as it gets. And most of you, none of us are doing this. S is for sleep. E is for exercise. E is for eating well. And D is for drinking water. Just those things will have a massive influence on how you go through change. The actions of change, my final point, the actions of change are small actions. People who go through change do not jump to the top of the mountain, as a metaphor for the film that's coming. It's a step at a time. It's like a woodpecker. What is the action? What's the one thing I've got to do now? What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? Who can help me with this action tomorrow? But what are you actually doing? Because you never know when that tree's going to fall. But the actions of actually getting sort of in the flow, that's where things really start happening. So again, a lot more stuff to say about action, but are you in action or are you actually in inaction? So those are 9 principles. Again, what I would say is just, look at them as a global, your beliefs, the change guarantee, the change muscle, the change demons, your emotions that get in the way, the power of acceptance. Are you an accepting person when it comes to change? The things you can control. Are you an external control person or more of an inwardly focused person? Your spiritual side, is that something that has gotten your attention lately or not? Because a change is always an invitation to look at the inner world, not the outer world. Your change team, who's on it, and taking action. So with that, I'm just going to wrap up and just give you a sense, the last couple of years, I did take time off from the writing, and I did take time off from the speaking. And I decided to just focus on what my next book is going to be. So I'll give you a sneak 1 minute about what that is. I'm writing a book called A Foot in Both Worlds. And A Foot in Both Worlds is about walking a spiritual path, or a mindful path, or a conscious path, whatever you want to call it, and fully being in the world. So it's not an either or, which a lot of the times people kind of go, well, it's either going to be this or it's going to be that. Either I'm going to be spiritual or I'm going to make a lot of money. Either I'm going to be in a relationship having sex or I'm going to be meditating every day on a cushion. Like, people have funny ideas about the either or of this concept. So I wanted to see both for myself how it was possible to live in New York City in a fully mindful way, in a fully conscious way, in a relationship, eating well, in doing work that mattered, making money, whatever it was, and interviewing people who really do have a foot in both worlds. And then, as Rachel said as well, I wanted to just get on, more of the app bandwidth and sort of turn this into an iPhone app. So Mindful 365, we're testing it right now. It'll be out probably in September. And we're hoping to do an Android version soon, believe me. And what we've also done is we're doing it as a daily email for people who don't have smartphones. But it's just a paragraph or two of the similar type of content I've been speaking about, looking at 20 years of research in personal development, in life skills, where we'll send you a question to focus on for the day. And it could be about looking at your disapproval, or looking at how impatient you are today, or looking at, your relationship to your body in a particular way. But I invite you all to look at that. It's going to be at mindful365.com, and then obviously on the iTunes store as well. And then the film is this afternoon. I don't know if you guys have the time to come, but that was an extraordinary experience. But I want to take some questions if you guys have any. Thank you very much.
So you talk about people being positive. Have you encountered the other end of the spectrum? Naivete, this is going to work in some really unrealistic way, as being another way that people fail at making change.
Did everyone hear that? So he was saying, one of the things I noticed is when people are positive, no matter what, somehow they find a way through change. And his question was, have you found the other side of the spectrum is people who have a degree of naivete and actually don't know somehow things work out? There is something very positive in actually not knowing and not having a plan and not having any idea how to go through it, that actually also pulls you through. One of the hardest things to get through when you're going through change is a sense of I know, is a sense of I'm educated, I was told, I've been through this before, other people have told me. And so there's a clinging to a particular way of having it being. But I'll give you an example. I've never built an app before, and I think there's an advantage of being a bit naive about not having built an app, so I'm not trying to be the perfect app builder, right? I'm just going ahead and giving what I can and doing the content I can and figuring it out along the way. And I'm being quite positive about it, where I just know that it's going to be helpful, it's going to make a difference. That's the part very often that pulls you through. I think when you go through change, I didn't mention this, but when you go through change, one of the big differences is if you know why you're going through the change, if you know why you're making the change, the why is the fuel that pulls you through. Me trying to figure out app developers and coding and everything is not what pulls me through. The why of wanting to make a difference, right? The why of knowing that it's going to be helpful for people who are going to find this, that's what makes the difference. So you can be very naive about a change that you're in, but if you know why you're going through it, that's usually the thing that pulls you through. So the question was, any tips on helping an introvert going through change? The number one thing I would say is stop labeling yourself and stop labeling anyone who is a particular way. Because the labeling has basically put a box over how you should be, how you should act, how much you should talk, how you should interact with others. So whether you are or not, I'm not arguing with the reality of the thing. I'm arguing with the label of the thing, which stops you from naturally doing what it is that the expression might come through. Beyond the labeling, and I would invite most people to stop labeling anyone in any way, I would say get in touch with the intuition. We all have that inner microphone. You don't need to be extroverted or introverted. It goes off really loudly at particular times. And what we do is we're experts at turning the microphone down. But the good thing about life is life never lets you turn it off. It's never at a zero. It's kind of at this latent, you can kind of always hear it, and you're always trying to make it quieter. But as an introvert, extrovert, I would say turn the inner microphone on, give it a voice, and sort of listen to what it's saying about a particular area of your life, about something that's going on for you personally, professionally, financially. You know, I'd say turning on the intuition. And for people, you know, I often get the flip question, which is, well, I don't even know what my intuition is, which is a great question, because a lot of people, it's like, there's intuition, and then there's also your conditioning, right? There's like, my conditioning is telling me definitely don't do this. No. That's not your intuition. If you're confused about the two, here's where you go. You always go to your body. Your body never lies. Are you feeling tight? Are you not sleeping? Are you nervous? Are you sweating? Are you eating or drinking more than usual? If you're about to do a deal, are you really contracted? So for people who, you know, the mind is busy or whatever is going on, you always go to the body. How is the body feeling? If you're invited to do something, what's the heart want? Do I get a yes or do I get a no? And we ignore it all the time. And so life throws another change at us, and another change, and another change, until we actually start listening to what's the inner intuition, what's the microphone actually wanting to have you say yes to. And it's hard sometimes, because you've got to say no to things that people want you to say yes to. And you've got to say no to things that you've always been expected to do, right? And so there's a sense of like, wanting to please when you're going through change, and yet also wanting to honor what's going on inside. So I'd say always turning on the heart, turning on the intuition, listening more, getting away from the noise and the busyness of other people who are trying to influence you. I wouldn't say it was people who didn't make it through change. It's people who struggled a lot through change. So when they were going through change, instead of actually moving, you know, at the pace that they would have maybe liked to move, they were stuck with a change for years and years and years. So I interviewed people who'd lost a loved one. And I could tell people who had made it something beautiful, and they had started a foundation, or they had done something positive, or they had started celebrating that person's passing, as opposed to doing it in a very different sort of way. So life, you're going to make it no matter what. That's a done deal. Life's going to take care of every single one of us. It's just a matter of how much suffering are you going to take on when life gives you a change to look at. I wanted to see, well, why is it some people have an easier time through change? Why are they less stressed? Why are they less sad? Why are they more excited? Because, you know, one of the things we didn't talk about is good changes are actually just as hard as the difficult changes. You know, people getting married, people having children, people getting promoted, people who've, you know, gone on, started businesses, been very successful. The good changes bring up a lot of these same issues because something's changed, right? It's just not what they thought, and they don't quite know how to deal with it. So it's not only the difficult, challenging ones. When I interviewed people who'd gone through the greatest things, winning the lottery. I interviewed a few of those people, and just how difficult it was for them to be with a positive change as well. So it wasn't make it or not make it, and I apologize if I said that. It was more the ease with which they transitioned through change. Good question. So is it possible to help someone through a change if they're not really willing to accept what's going on? I would say yes. And the best way to help someone through change is to be a refuge for them. And by refuge, I mean they can stay in whatever feeling they're at, place they're at. It doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. You basically allow them to be, because what they need is love, and what they need is acceptance. They don't need tips, they don't need advice. If they ask for guidance, you give it. If not, you're encroaching, right? And I've been guilty of that too. As someone who likes to help people through change, it's very easy to want to change. But the number one place to go to is just go, what does this person most need? That's the question. Does this person need, some affection? Does this person need me to check in with them? Does this person need a referral to someone? But it's not what you think they need. It's really tuning in and kind of going, what does this person need? But it's a radical acceptance of who they are. And it's also a seeing of who they're going to be on the other end of this. So if you can already hold a vision for how they're going to be when they get through this, they start feeling that when they're around you. They don't feel stuck around you. You've already seen them move through the challenge. You've already seen them healthy. You've already seen them in a relationship or whatever it is that they're looking to be in. Thank you very much.